Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned. We're going to teach you how to experience growth daily. Hey everybody, Dr. David coming at you today with my partner in crime, Dr. Nicholas Jensen. What's happening, my brother?
Good, buddy. It's been nice. We had a little extra time today to connect and chat beforehand, and we only get to see each other once a week, and from a distance and on Zoom. So every time we get that extra bit of time, it's just there's just never enough time to just get everything out that we need to say before we get on. So it's nice to take a little extra time today.
Well, it's important time, man. I kind of feel like you're my doctor. I have to check in with you once a week, so we may have to make that extra time right before we get on and start recording every week, right?
That's right.
So, man, coming out of last week, how fun was that conversation?
It was so fun, and I don't always get a chance to go back and listen to the episodes from the week before, but I just had to go onto it and tune in again because he was sharing such powerful information that you just don't hear about. There's a lot of research out there, which we're going to get into some today. There's a lot of research out there you have to sift through to find some of the details that he's speaking to hear through the horse's mouth, someone who's been in research for over 50 years, speak on these really eloquent, sophisticated aspects to our human physiology and how it relates to spirituality and then into the electrochemistry of it all. It was awesome. It was really, really cool to hear that.
It was mind-blowing, man. I felt like I was in school again, learning a new concept, and I really appreciated him showing us this divine machine in a completely different light, that people really need to understand how essential some of the fundamentals of what we are actually plays into our health. And so last week we really, we talked about the fact that we are light beings and we are tuned to things like the sun, and we have to be hydrated. Imagine that. And, we need to be getting a good amount of antioxidants, which are a lot of things a lot of people just aren't really, I don't think they give them their weight. And I want to kind of take that conversation and move into something that kind of is along the same vibration as we were talking about. And so today we're going to talk about earthing, aka grounding. So this is a practice that, I was telling Nick, I think I've been doing this for probably 12 or 13 years already. I learned about earthing through a doctor named Dr. Jeff Spencer. Really amazing guy. Learned a lot from him. He was one of my guides when I got right out of school and I started practicing. He was actually Lance Armstrong's doctor, and he was the doctor that would go with the U.S. Postal team to the Tour de France every year. And so one of the strategies that they actually used for recovery was earthing. So the story goes, man, during the race, this Tour de France race is intense, right? I don't know how many legs and how many days it goes, but these guys basically ride all day, and then they jump off and they get to eat and they have to sleep, and then they jump on the bike the next day and they go again, and then they do it again and again and again and again. So you're talking about a big, massive amount of stress on the human body, where the body recovery is key for the success of anybody that's trying to do that race, so that they can not only keep injuries at bay, but be able to have the juice in the tank, right? And the body's not breaking down. So one of the cool things that he would do with all those cyclers is they would ground every night. So he would have them on these grounding mats where they would lay and sleep on these mats. He'd have like those electrode patches on certain areas of their bodies, depending on where they were sore or they were having trouble. And he would literally take a rod and go and plug it into the ground outside the hotel, and everything would be wired to this rod. And all these cyclers would basically ground every single night for recovery. And they had massive, healing every night before the next leg of the race. And that's why they were so successful. It's funny, the story that he tells is there was one year that they didn't take him to be the team doc. And that's the only year that the U.S. Postal team did not win the Tour de France. Wow. And that was the one year they didn't win. And then the next year when he came back, they won. So it just goes to show you how powerful recovery is, but what tools are people using? And this is a really easy tool to use. It's at our disposal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always there. And you can even upgrade yourself and do this indoors with mats and all kinds of things to still get the benefit inside your house. So I want to just kind of dive into basically what it is first. And then we'll go from there and really talk about the science, because there's a lot of research that has proven and is still proving the efficacy of how powerful this is. So basically, what a lot of people don't understand is the earth beneath our feet also basically provides free electrons all day. We have basically this connection that people don't understand that we've been insulated from as modern times, from, we're laying concrete down and there's different types of surfaces now, and we're basically disconnected from the earth. And then we wear shoes. So slowly over time, with modernization of everything, we've slowly gotten disconnected from something that I believe is basically this very, very important connection, because we always talk about we're connected to the earth, but this is something that I think has been taken away from us just with modern times, but we need to go back to getting the benefit of this. So we have this limitless supply of electrons that's just boiling off the ground as we walk. Okay, and this, you guys feel this in the lakes and the oceans when you swim, this natural negative electric charge. So when we put our bodies to the ground, it dissipates static electricity and extraneous environmental electric charges that are on us. So it kind of like balances us out, our physiology. And so you kind of get, we talked about Beamer a couple of weeks ago, but it's kind of like the earth puts us back into sync. It brings this like synchronization of the earth's natural frequencies back into our body. And the absence of these things will lead to a lot of issues with our health.
Some of my earlier, I guess, sources of credibility that we got exposed to was one of our favorite cardiologists. I don't know if you remember Dr. Steve Sinatra. He was at one of the conferences that we were at a number of years ago, and I'd first been introduced to him a few years before that at a naturopathic conference. And this guy's, big time cardiologist, well known all over the world. And I think he was actually a part of don't quote me, but I think he was in one of the documentaries on grounding, and I think it was just called Earthing. But he was talking about in relation to cardiovascular health and healing, and actually implementing as part of his protocol to get people back, through this recovery process in the cardiovascular system as one of like the foundational tools. And I thought, well, if a cardiologist is speaking to the efficacy of grounding, then there must be some legitimacy to it. And sure enough, just today, actually, David pulled up a couple of studies and said, I think we need to spend some time talking about this. So we took a look at some of the products that he's using, to help with grounding at nighttime and whatnot, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But what I wanted to say was, let's sort of paint the picture of this chronic oxidative stress a little bit, because we have spent a number of podcasts highlighting this, but I think it's good to sort of anchor back into the problem and then talk about what the solution does. Like, what are these negative ions? What are they doing in the body, when we get sort of plugged back into the earth? And we all intuitively know we feel better when we're at the beach. We feel better when we're in nature. It feels really good to get your feet in the sand, for example. So let's also spend some time talking about what it means to get those electrons inside the body. So first of all, we're dealing with a huge amount of chronic illness. We're massively disconnected. We're driving cars. We're on the soles of our rubbered shoes most of the day. When it's cold outside, we don't go outside. We're spending more time indoors on computers. Processed foods. You can add some more stuff in here if you want, David. I mean, we're in a chronic stress state essentially, and we're massively disconnected from our planet.
Well, it's interesting, man. A lot of scientists are now believing that it's these environmental factors that you're speaking about is the causes of why we're having these chronic illnesses and these immune issues and these inflammatory diseases. Because when you look at most of these chronic health problems, it's an inflammatory immune related issue. Yeah. So could it be possible, everybody, that it's because we need to get back to some of the basics of what we are as human beings and where we need to be connected to Earth? It could be that simple. And here's the cool thing. Science is starting to point in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about reactive oxygen species now, and kind of like the bigger picture there. So I mean, this is inflammation, right? So that was kind of like my initial teaching with grounding was, look, you're constantly having these reactive oxygen species, like kind of like they give the rusty nail, right? Example of like a nail's going to rust over time, and antioxidants and things like that. Everybody's heard that helps with these reactive oxygen species, but basically all the time our body is oxidizing from stress and these environmental factors that we have on us. And this has massive implications on our body's immune responses and our inflammatory responses of how our body is able to control these things. So like Nick's saying, from the toxicity and we're inside all day, I mean, we're just dealing with a whole lot of different things in this natural day and time. And I think it would be safe to say, man, like our ancestors didn't have to deal with the amount of stress that we deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not even close.
Yeah.
Completely different environment. So we've gotten this separation, and, you know, being able to plug into something daily that is literally free, that doesn't cost anything. And I think they recommend doing at least 30 minutes a day of just going in and absorbing these free electrons that are just basically coming off of the Earth's, you know, the Earth helps mitigate a lot of these issues that we're experiencing with these reactive oxygen species, and it decreases this inflammation. It helps modulate the immune system. We're going to get into all the other stuff, but I mean, it's so simple, but I think the simplicity of it makes people think that, oh, well, there couldn't be anything to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I think that's the molecular focus that we can pay attention to, is these reactive oxygen species that in a chronic state of inflammation, they're kind of being recycled and re-exposed to different tissues of the body. And that could be chronic joint pain, it could be shoulder pain, it could be not recovering from an injury, it could be poor tissue healing from like skin laceration that's just not resolving properly. You know, it could be just fatigue, it could be insomnia. You know, whatever is propagating this chronic state of oxidative stress. You know, we talked about the heavy metals, we could talk about environmental pollutants, maybe we're eating a really pro-inflammatory style of food, or highly processed or bad fats, you know, oxidized fats and low amounts of amino acids, low enzymes, you know, because our food is no longer has any of the living enzymes, like we talked about with Wade in that BioOptimizer podcast. I mean, so we're literally in an state of overwhelm because of our environmental stressors, our biochemical stressors, our mindset, you know, constantly in this fight or flight state. And so you betcha we're producing a huge amount of reactive oxygen species. And so, I mean, on one of these studies that David pulled up, he was looking, there was some criteria that they were looking at where they put people into a grounding experience, and they were measuring a bunch of different factors. And so they measured time to fall asleep, quality of sleep, waking feeling rested, muscle stiffness and joint pain, chronic back pain or joint pain, and then general well-being. So they were comparing this to a control group who, you know, were not being grounded over the time of sleep, and in this case they were using a grounding mat. So the time to fall asleep, there was an 85% improvement in the test subjects versus 13% in the control group. Quality of sleep was 93% improvement in those who were using grounding versus 13% in the control group. Waking feeling rested, like this is a big one. 100% of the test subjects said they felt rested when they woke up, compared to 13% of those who were in the test. Muscle stiffness and joint pain, 82% improvement in those test subjects who were using grounding. No improvement in those who were doing the same thing, of course. The chronic back and or joint pain, 74% improvement versus 0%. And then general well-being, 78% improvement versus 13%. And so, I mean, these are not mild improvements. These are significant changes from this study time. And I think so. It was a blinded pilot study. It was 60 subjects, 22 males and 28 females. And they were recording these aches and pains for over at least 6 months. And so they're divided to the different groups, and then the test subjects were given the carbon fiber mattress pads. And yeah, I mean, that was basically a summary of the study. And how many people, I mean, myself included, I'm not using a grounding mat. After this call David and I get off of, I'm going to go and order one, because I'm so curious, because he's been, how long have you been using yours for?
For like 13 years, man.
Wow.
Probably at least, because this was something I came across very early in my career. And I did see the science behind it, and I saw the proof of the pudding, like I'm saying with Dr. Jeff Spencer. And, that was enough for me. I mean, I think the study that I saw that they were doing back then was on cortisol, which is also in the study that I sent you. And I think they were with one of the NFL football teams. I think it was the Minnesota Vikings. And during their training camp, when they have like these 2-a-days, right, for like a couple weeks, they were putting part of the team on the mats, part of the team didn't get the mats, and they were just doing basically checking their cortisol levels before and after they were grounding when they would sleep. And then they were looking at a good 24-hour cortisol profile. And all the athletes that were actually grounding showed much lower levels of cortisol on this cortisol secretion profile, when they were grounding versus the ones that didn't. So, I mean, between that and then just seeing the recovery and the healing, I mean, that for me was enough. But it's really nice to see, 13 years later, there's been a ton of more research put into this, and they're proving a whole lot more efficacy of the power of this. And like you said, I mean, you're reading this stuff and we're like, excuse my language, it's like, holy shit, like, could it be that simple? And to be honest with people, like, it does make a big difference. Yeah. I always tell patients, like, sometimes it's these little things that we do every day that compound over time, right? And like, I've noticed a significant difference when I have my mat on my bed all the time, which is most of the time, but I have had a few times where I pulled it off because I had to wash it and I didn't get it back on the bed for a couple of weeks. And I did see a significant change in my sleep and my rest and all those other things. So, I mean, it's massive, man. I mean, let's get into some more of the things that it benefits. So the other thing outside of like cortisol levels, which is our stress hormones, it helps massively reduce electric fields induced on our body.
Yeah.
So we live in this time where we're getting hit 24/7 with things that are affecting the electrical capacity of your body. What everybody needs to understand about your bodies, real quick, is, like we were talking last week, our body is constantly working through this communication process, and we have this bioelectrical, bioenergetic, biochemical processes that are constantly having to take place. And there are things in our environment, like Nick's talking, all the things he mentioned, but you look at EMFs from Wi-Fi and 5G and your cell phones and the computers, and I mean, you can't escape it. If you're inside all day and you're in an office these days, you're getting hit 24/7 on your electrical systems of the body. And all these things disrupt this harmonious, almost like vibration that we're supposed to be in all day. So they've even shown a massive amount of research showing that people that ground, this helps massively kind of put their body back into sync versus people that don't. It helps mitigate a lot of these electric fields that we have to deal with. One of the things I always do to help my patients shield themselves when they have to work on a computer all day is I tell them to get a grounding mat, an earthing mat, and either put it under their keyboard to where their palms are touching it while they're on their keyboard all day, or to put it under their desk on the floor, and then to take their shoes off when they're at work and just put their feet on their mat, because that will actually mitigate a lot of the stress that you're getting from the computer all day, those EMFs that come off the computer.
Yeah, that was really cool to see that, because there's pendants, there's we had the Focus Life Force Energy guys that were on, which is essentially a monthly subscription to harmonize the electrical fields. But like, this is one of the most problematic areas for people, especially with sleep at nighttime. And maybe they live in an apartment building and there's Wi-Fi through every floor. Every unit has Wi-Fi, and you're getting these massive amount of, and there's just huge amounts of electrical circuitry through these larger buildings. And so these electrical fields are huge. And if your body can be in a or a more resilient state as a result of the grounding, you're able to mitigate some of the stresses of that environment, which you may feel like you've got no control over. So I think that that's a huge one. But you know, especially for those that are suffering from, you know, sleep issues due to these geopathic stresses. You know, in saying all this, what we already mentioned, there should be sort of a given understanding, which is also spoken to in this study with regards to the ANS regulation, you know, that shift out of that sympathetic dominant state into the parasympathetic.
Oh,
which
that's
again,
huge.
yeah, especially when you think, again, sleep onset, a lot of people who are struggling to fall asleep, or the monkey mind can't turn off. You know, if you're put into an environment that really inducts you into a deeply relaxed state, because it's actually helping you to re-regulate your nervous system, that's going to have a profound impact, you know, especially if we're going to sleep, you know, that high cortisol. You know, we just ate a bunch of food, we watched Netflix, a really stressful show, or you watch the news and your body's all, you know, vibed up from this experience. Well, you can put yourself into this, you know, this grounding mat and create this positive feedback to actually allow that nervous system to calm down. I know you love talking about the nervous system, so I'm sure you might have some other points on that
Well, I mean,
discussion.
for all of our listeners, just think about this for a second. Many of us are having health issues because we're constantly stuck in this fight or flight, this survival defense mode. And, you know, one of the things that you have to create some awareness for yourself when it comes to your health is how to deactivate and return back to this calm, relaxed state. And there's so many things that you can utilize to help you do this, you know, from chiropractic care to NIS. I mean, Nick, what do you have at your place that helps with stuff like this to kind of get people switched back over?
Yeah, I mean, even like, you know, brain tap. Obviously, we teach breath work and yoga postures, and
I mean, there's a lot
sauna.
of stuff.
There's a
Yeah.
ton of stuff.
Tons of stuff. So this is an issue for people, and this is what kind of contributes to this immunity problem, right? We have immune health problems and this inflammation that we can't control. It's because this is your switchboard, like I always talk. This is the foundation of what puts us into that state that causes these problems. So being able to deactivate that quick is massive. And like you were saying, they're showing that people that ground have this immediate shift from a sympathetic tone to a parasympathetic tone. Their respiratory rate increases, their blood oxygenation basically goes back to a stable place. Their heart rate slightly rises to show the start of a metabolic healing to help with the increase in oxygen consumption. So look at all these amazing physiological processes that happen just when you get this switch over. And that's how you get healing. So for everybody listening, remember, parasympathetic is my immune system is up, it's working for me, my body's in healing mode, I'm in an anabolic state where I can put myself and repair myself and put myself back together. But if you're stuck in fight or flight all the time in the survival defense mode, that doesn't happen. So if you're wondering why you're chronically having problems and it feels like your body keeps breaking down, it's probably because you are stuck in sympathetic. Mm-hmm. So it's either your lifestyle or you don't have things implemented into your life to help deactivate and kind of move that needle, and you've lost reactivity.
Yeah.
And the long-term effects of this are huge.
Huge. Well, and you know, if we hopped over to the other study for a moment, they're showing this non-healing wound. And it was a wound that was, and we'll put the links to the studies in here so you guys can go check it out as well. There's an 84-year-old woman who is an 8-month-old non-healing open wound. She's diabetic, of course. I mean, those are the common, you know, issue for many diabetics is that you're not getting proper perfusion of blood in the tissue, really hard to heal. And you got to see basically just, you know, was it 30 minutes of exposure to grounding after 1 week of daily 30-minute exposures had a profound change. You can see the tissue change in the different photos that they have available. I mean, the wound looks gnarly, man. It's like an open, red, angry wound. And after 1 week already, it's massively transformed. Then you get to see it again after 2 weeks, and it's nearly fully healed. So, you know, I mean, this is an extreme example, and there's more examples in the study. But just think of like anything. It could be like an old injury. It could be, again, a chronic inflammatory event. We talked about these reactive oxygen species, which are propagating this chronic state of inflammation in the body. There could be just areas of your body that just aren't healing, and it's more of a nuisance as opposed to like this big gaping wound in your body. And, to see just the kind of the dramatic effect that happens after just a short period of time is pretty profound. And, David and I aren't saying that this fixes everything. It's just that if this is missing, or when this is missing, you're missing a piece to that puzzle, which this is a passive tool, right? Like, I mean, if it's a mat, you're literally just sleeping on at night. If it's you spending more time in nature, it's you spending more time in nature. It just kind of happens by virtue of being in that environment.
It was like I was telling you, man, like I kind of feel this theme come up the last couple of weeks with my clients and patients of like, it's these little things that we do every day that compound over time that make the difference in your health. I think everybody's looking for like the high hanging fruit to make the big change, and they want to skip just working on these low hanging fruits and just pick more of the low hanging fruit and let that accumulate to make big changes. But like you're saying, Nick, I mean, how easy is this to implement into your process on a daily that's going to help mitigate some of that inflammation, right? It's going to help with your nervous system. It's going to help with all these little foundational things, and understanding that like as a human being, this is something that is essential for your body. Yeah. I mean, we're starting to show that. I mean, our ancestors didn't have to think about this. They were always connected. Mm-hmm. One of the stories I also heard when I started learning about this was like when animals get sick, like I think they used a cat as an example. Like, has anybody ever had like a cat or a dog that when they're sick, number one, they don't want to eat. But the story that I heard is like this guy had a cat, it wasn't feeling well, it wasn't eating, and then all of a sudden it disappeared for a couple of days. And he lived with like his property was up against, I guess, like a forest type area. And so his cat disappeared for like 3 or 4 days, and then it came back and it was fine. And he says the reality of what that cat was probably doing is it went out into the forest and was just grounding. It just probably laid up, found a good patch of soil where it could just basically absorb these free electrons to help mitigate the stress response in its body. And they innately know what they need to do. Yeah. They innately know that that's something that helps them heal. And I think that because we have forgot what we are, that this actually plays a big part in our healing. And maybe we are having chronic health issues because we've forgotten that we need to be connected here. Yeah.
Well, here's a little quote. I mean, one of the things I want to ask you about, and I'll just get you to think on this while I read this little quote of this study. But there's something to be said, or an argument maybe, for using the grounding mats because there's some concerns around DC versus AC current. And I'm not sure if you have things you want to discuss on that, but I want to just read off a little paragraph on this study because I think it's important because it sort of speaks to what's actually happening. So in response to reducing electrical fields, this is the study that you sent me, David. Mm-hmm. It was saying the study showed that when the body is grounded, its electrical potential becomes equalized with the Earth's electrical potential through a transfer of electrons from the Earth to the body. This in turn prevents the 60 hertz mode from producing an AC electrical potential at the surface of the body and from producing perturbations of the electrical charges of the molecules inside the body. So this is where there may be a question of, what happens when an AC current versus a DC current is applied to the body. And then it goes on to say, the study confirms the umbrella effect of earthing the body explained by Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman in his lectures on electromagnetism. Feynman said that when the body potential is the same as the Earth's electrical potential and thus grounded, it becomes an extension of the Earth's gigantic electrical system. The Earth's potential thus becomes the working agent that cancels, reduces, or pushes away electrical fields from the body. So I think that's a powerful statement. I'm going to get you to share some of your thoughts on what this is doing. But essentially, the way I read this is that when you're plugged into that frequency of the Earth, what that natural biorhythm, that natural electrical communication that the Earth is giving us, we're just much more resilient creatures. Whatever is happening around us is less influential because we've literally recharged ourselves.
And that's exactly how I look at it, man. I mean, this is kind of like our natural recharging system. And it's just, we really just need to resync all the time. We talked about the beamer a couple of weeks ago about how when you lay on that, your body falls into the sync with that specific signature of electromagnetic frequency that's being emitted to help with vasomotion. Well, everything is no different, man. When we ground, the body will find its way back into sync. And like I'm saying, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, they're showing you can benefit just from 30 minutes a day. So, I mean, how hard is it 30 minutes a day to get outside and walk barefoot? Or if you live by bodies of water like oceans, lakes, and streams, go jump in the water. You can do this on gravel and rock. You can do it on unsealed brick, unsealed concrete, right? As long as it's not coated with like a water-based sealant. Plants and living trees ground you. Go climb a tree, go hug a tree. Right.
Well, it's important to say, like it can happen through your hands as well, right? Like
yeah. I mean, just any part of your body, like just your skin needs to be, touching these surfaces. But 30 minutes minimum, just like every day, can make massive effects on you. I mean, massive. I mean, I remember one time we went to Seattle, and it was a beautiful time in Seattle in April, and they had this beautiful park near the city, and I was just laying in this big patch of grass on this beautiful day looking at the clouds. We took our shoes off and we were walking all around Seattle, and I just remember how good it felt because we had flown in that morning, and I felt like everything just kind of reset me hanging out in that park for about an hour. And then the rest of my day was like completely different. I didn't feel the jet lag. And there's a lot of people that even talk about this is one of the ways you can mitigate some of this jet lag when you travel internationally is you go to a park, take off your shoes, and just ground for a little while when you get there. And, I don't know, I haven't seen much of the research, but there is talks that this is supposed to help mitigate some of that stress when we travel. Because when we travel, we get a ton of reactive oxygen species.
Yeah.
There's a lot of oxidation when you fly. So if anything, it's at least going to mitigate that oxidation that you just had on that flight and kind of just pull the body back into that nice, like you're saying, like sinking it back into that natural vibration it's supposed to be at and putting the body back into that normal physiology, that relaxed state.
Yeah, as you're saying that, it kind of like intuitively makes sense. And, you think of our technology naturally updates, our phone updates time zones when we go to a new time zone. This is almost like a way of, updating the frequency of your body to the frequency, the magnetism of that geography of where you're going to. This is just having these conversations hopefully stirs some people's thinking around, maybe they chronically have a tough time with that jet lag because they haven't actually plugged in their device, their human form into, that experience when you're back or like, for that geography that you're going to. And I think, how interesting is that? I typically have a more difficult time with the jet lag when I come back home, because when I come back home, I just get back in my normal rhythm, like the work thing, the shoes on the ground but when you're actually off at a vacation, typically our vacations involve surfing and beaches and sand and that kind of thing. So we're right away, once we get there, we've got our feet in the soil immediately when we touch ground. Whereas when we come back home, it's back to the routine. So again, that's just an N of one or my experience. I'm not sure if others have something similar.
Well, I mean, that's your and Sonia's jam, right? Like that's how you guys play. You travel and you go play in nature, and I think just naturally you guys are able to sink into the environments that you go play in, right?
Yeah.
But that travel doesn't always look that way for everybody.
No.
But the more I talk about this with you, man, the more I just hope people really get excited about like the simplicity of this and the fact that it is important and that you need to make changes to where this is something like Nick is saying, this isn't going to be a miracle heal for you and it's not going to completely change your health, but it will have a big impact every day if you're doing it versus if you're not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got a couple things like that I'm going to be tracking in my own health when we get our grounding mat onto our bed. And so I'll come back with some feedback based on my experience. So I think we should tune in on this conversation again down the road.
Well, this is perfect, man, because you have a lot of data with your Aura ring already being not grounded. So you're going to see, it's going to be easy to really see that shift in data when you start doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else that you want to share on this discussion, brother?
I think we hit most of like the big aspects of the benefit of what we're getting from such a simple practice, like you say, right? And it's a passive practice, but um, the only other thing I would probably talk about is again is we're all in this time of everybody's a little bit in fear because of the stuff we have going on in our world with this. I don't even want to mention it because then people get funny, but this so pandemic they're calling it. But I mean, this helps with your immune system. I mean, this is just one of those ways that helps your immune system. You're fighting inflammation. You're doing. I mean, so if you're looking for ways to improve your health, this is an easy passive one. And like I said, I've been doing it for 13 years. It's not a super expensive thing to do. I know sometimes people, get sticker shock when they go online and say, "Oh, damn, that would be cool, but I can't afford that." I mean, and just real quick, we're not getting paid by anybody to like mention these things, but I sleep on a earthing mat from earthing.com. So this is initially where I got my mat. Go check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. Just go to earthing.com. You'll see on there that they have tons of different ways that you can actually get started with this technology, from doing, a grounding mat on your bed to they have electrodes or little like straps you can strap on you, maybe while you're at work on a computer, or like I talked earlier, the mat on the floor under your keyboard. And the idea is just like get started somewhere. And if you don't want to spend money, you don't have to. Just go outside, take your shoes off, and go spend a half hour with the feet actually touching, the bare earth, and get that benefit. But you got to start somewhere. And, me and Nick, I think we just go all in with some of these things, and we're just going to really hit it hard. But I mean, I would tell people like it has to be done indoors too, because most of us are indoors all day and we're not getting outside enough. So it is worth the investment, and it's very cost effective to do some of these things. So go check out earthing.com, and there's a lot more information on there about it. And then you can Google, just type in grounding science. And there's tons of research articles that will actually come up, show the effects of grounding. So it's not hard information to find if you want to look at it for yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there, if you had to pick as a starter kit for people, what would be like, the biggest bang for your buck that you would think would be a place for people to start?
So I honestly think the best place, if you're going to have to make a small investment, is to buy a mat for your bed. You're going to sleep 6 to 8 hours a night on this thing. It's going to mitigate a lot of things, from deactivating your nervous system to decreasing inflammation and improving your immune response and lowering cortisol, like all those things we're talking about. And then second to that, if you can afford it, do a mat. If you're somebody who sits on a computer all day and that has to be on a computer at a desk all day, and you're around all this, these electromagnetic frequencies, I would mitigate some of that by grounding yourself while you're at work. So then you're getting it during the day while you're at work, and then when you get it when you go to sleep. And so then it's almost like you're outside grounding all day.
Yeah, it looks like they even have pet beds too. So if you got
they got pet beds, so they have electrodes, they have bands. I mean, so many different ways you can do this stuff, but they've really made it easy, man. Because like when I started doing this like 13 years ago, it was kind of in its beta version. Mm-hmm. And they've really perfected the science and the technology and stuff. Yeah, those pet beds are awesome, and they're sold out. So I'm sure they're really good. I think I'm going to buy my pet's a bed, because we got to be
fighting over, man.
Oh man, we got 5 geriatric dogs at home, and they're just at that stage where they need a little bit more support, man. And honestly, like it'll make a difference for them. I think that's why these beds are sold out.
Yeah. Wow. And any last comments on plugging in the earthing equipment? Like if there's a preference?
You get your kit, it's interesting. When you get your kit, they actually send with your kit usually. You have to make sure when you order a little tester. So what you do at your house is you put this little tester into the outlet of your home, and it will tell you if that is a good outlet that you can utilize to ground. And then, so there's like these little dials on top that will light up the moment you plug in, just like if you were going to plug an outlet. And so what basically all that happens is the part that you're actually plugging into the mat, it just clips onto your mat. And then when we have this 3-prong plug-in, right? So the mat doesn't use anything that actually plugs into the two vertical holes in the outlet. It just is the circular one.
Yeah.
So you're just plugging one directly into that circular hole in there, and that's it. It's literally that easy. And then you can buy. They have a little testing product. I believe they have it on the website. You'll have to look. So you put it on the mat, and it verifies for you that it's boiling off the electrons and that it's grounded, so you can verify that the mat's working. So there's that as well. So there are things to make sure that it's working, and that, to troubleshoot it if you don't think it is. And like Nick is saying, if you're somebody who actually tracks a lot of your data, and you have some of these trackers like the Oura Ring or the Whoop Band or Fitbit, it might be interesting for you to get one of these and really look and to see if we see big changes in your biomarkers over time as you're actually implementing something like this.
Yeah, especially going back to some of the studies where they're actually looking at biomarkers for inflammation, white blood cell counts, neutrophils. Like, they're literally looking at physiological markers. And so, to think that we would expect to see some changes in something like a functional tool like an Oura Ring, it would be pretty significant, I imagine, especially heart rate variability. I mean, that was actually listed on the study as one of those parameters that definitely shifts. So yeah, I think that'll be a fun experiment. So David, thank you so much for bringing all this amazing information, man.
Oh yeah. Well, and the other thing I would tell people is please hydrate. Like, you have to be hydrated for this stuff to really have an effect on your body. And I tell people your hydration is kind of like that conductive fluid that helps everything do its job. So if you're dehydrated and you're trying to do something like this, you're not going to get that full benefit. So hydrate.
Yeah, and Klaus mentioned that on the last podcast too, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that great sunlight means nothing if you don't have that, that exclusion zone water, or he's got a big technical term for what that water means, from an electrochemical engineer or electrochemical researcher point of view. But the whole idea is that, you need that mechanism, that environment for a charge to be held. And so hydration, I'm glad you said that. That's important.
The body's electric, man.
There you go. All right, brother, another amazing discussion today. Thank you for all your insight, and it's great to have all that experience behind you to be able to share over time.
I'm happy to share it, man, because it's something I've been doing a long time, and I can't believe we didn't think about this a while back to kind of talk about. I need to kind of dip into all the other little things I do, and we need to start. We need to kind of talk about those things.
Well, isn't that interesting? I mean, this is sort of the Achilles heel of a doctor, is that we do so many different things, and the things that we do on a regular basis have just it's autopilot. We don't even think about it, and so we forget to talk about some of these things as a result of us just it being in our lifestyle. And when we do bring them up, often we're like, oh yeah, I guess I have been doing that for a number of years, and I didn't really think it was a big deal. I knew it was important at the time that I implemented, but then it just became autopilot. So I'm sure there'll be more little experiences we have like this where you're like, oh yeah, that's another thing that I've just been doing that I kind of don't have to think about anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah. Okay, my man. So good chatting with you again, and we're going to see you next week. We got some amazing guests coming up in the next few weeks. We look forward to sharing their insights with you. And David, always a pleasure, brother. We'll see you on the next one.
This was great, man. Love you, brother. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.